This is the second video that goes with interviewing. The first one, we kind of ran out of time. It has a 15-minute limit, so I'm going to wrap up with this video. We are going to cover the top 10 questions in an interview handout and then what STAR responses are. So if we take a peek at that handout, which is also in your materials for the week, it gives you tips on how to answer everything. So the first question you'll always get is tell me about yourself, okay? Sometimes it's tell me about yourself and why you would be an asset to my company. So in general, you're going to tell us, like this says, a little bit about what you've achieved and what your goals are. And then if you're answering why you're an asset, you're going to then address a little bit of the job posting. So if it's for Ag Carolina, perhaps you have experience running credit analysis because you did that as an intern. So you'd want to touch on that a little bit. This is not the place. Do not. It's not the place to get personal and talk about your boyfriend or how much you love your horse or how much you want to watch Netflix and that's your hobby. This is not the place for that. Okay. I'm going to keep it professional. Tell me about yourself professionally. Tell me about how you'll be an asset to this company professionally. And that's where your knowledge of the job posting and what the company needs is most important. Okay. What is your greatest strength? Sometimes you'll have to answer maybe what are your top 3 strengths. I've even seen top 5. And this is where having notes on your resume about what you want to touch on because you want to match them to the job posting if you can is helpful. You need to have an example for each strength. So you shouldn't answer organized, cheerful, and a hard worker and leave it at that. You're organized. Tell me how you've been organized at work. You're cheerful. I always have a positive attitude, even on a bad day. My coworkers have even given me an award for that before, etc. But you've got to give examples. Same for weaknesses. Okay. So if you're asked about your weaknesses, it needs to be a weakness that isn't too unprofessional. So I'm always late. Don't say that. Okay. It needs to be a weakness that can be tied to something not too negative. So saying things like, I can be critical of my own work. And I'm working on that by working through what's required for me in a job, making sure I've done it right, and then moving forward so that I'm not taking up too much time being overly critical. So you're going to give something that's not too negative and then how you're working to resolve that. Perhaps you have a hard time juggling multiple tasks at once. And you've resolved that by using a Google Calendar every day and making up a to-do list for your days and your weeks. That's fine. If that's not your strength, that's okay. But how are you resolving it? That's critical. You have to tell us how you're resolving it. It's like a big hint for your interview assignment. Okay. Situation where you've made a mistake. You want to give a mistake that's not too major and then what you learned from it. Okay. One I always use is I'm so focused on my to-do list, sometimes I'll rush. And one time working in an old job, I mixed the files of 2 students who had the same first and last name and same hometown. And it almost caused the wrong student to be contacted. And I resolved that first by owning up to it to my employer and telling them what happened and then telling them how I'd resolved it. I resolved it by first making the files, updating them so they were correct, ensuring that I hadn't made any contact yet, and then slowing down in my process and taking things just a little more piece by piece so I'm not rushing and making silly errors. Okay, so you don't want a situation that's too intense, but you've got to, again, touch on how you resolved it. Difficult situation you faced. You want to give a story again, where you can touch on some of the skills and traits you've mentioned. Anything you've improved about yourself, that's a weakness question that we've talked about. Now, when they ask about your career goals or what you're looking for in a job, you definitely want to talk about how you see yourself at that company. So you've done some research. Maybe if they ask, what's your 5-year plan? Maybe your 5-year plan could be something about moving up from a junior credit analyst to a senior credit analyst, okay? Or into management. So, definitely want to think about how you're going to meet the company's needs versus meeting your own goals and trying to make the most money possible. Okay. And there's some really good tips in here about how to answer that. When they ask you about what you want in a job, Try to avoid saying you want a job where everyone's happy all the time and everyone gets along, because those things aren't realistic. But you want an environment where there's open channels of communication, an environment that supports community work, if that's important to you. That's where some of those core values can come out, and you can see if you're a good match for the company and you're kind of interviewing them in a sense. Why you want to work for the company. I'm sorry, I skipped one, but we'll do number 9, why you want to work for the company. That's where, again, your research comes in. Maybe they have a new initiative you've seen in the news, and that's what pulled you into them. Mention that. Turn that down. But you've got to do research. You've got to talk about what appeals to you about that company specifically, not just the work or the job. What motivates you? They have really good answers here: challenge, creativity, success. But this is where you can touch on things you're good at that truly motivate you. This is where always being honest is critical, but most critical, because at this company, maybe you thrive off of positive feedback and this company has no means of providing feedback. That's going to be a problem for you. This is where matching and best fit comes into play. Why should I hire you? What are your strengths? Why are you an asset to the company over others? What makes you stand out? What do you bring to the table? Okay. You definitely also want to think about questions that are situational. So, most difficult situation you've ever faced, describe a situation in your past, tell me about a time, etc. I'm flipping back to our slides now. These are all kinds of questions that need to be answered with the STAR response, which is situation, task, activity, and result. Sorry, let me go back. So essentially, if someone says, tell me about a time you were a leader, you're not just going to say, I was in a Girl Scout troop and I led things for 2 years. Okay. You're going to tell us the whole situation. In my Girl Scout troop, people are elected to lead, and I was elected for 2 years in a row in such and such role. And in that role, it was difficult for people to step up as leaders because of this and that. And I was able to do so by taking this action and that action. That's your activity, your action. So the plan that you implemented, all the actions you took, and then what was the result? And as a result, we were able to, as a troop, win this award at a statewide meeting. Okay. Maybe you sold the most cookies because of your leadership initiative. People get stressed out when they think about STAR responses. So a really easy way to think is you're just giving full examples. When you hear, tell me about a time, describe a time, tell me about a situation, etc., you're just describing what happened and the result. And it needs to be something you did, not your team as a whole. Okay? Focus on you. I don't want to hear about how your best friend did something. I want to hear about how you led the group, how you resolved a difficult situation or conflict. Okay? And because you're in college or you're getting ready to graduate, you can use situations related to the classroom, your fraternity or sorority, a club or organization, extracurriculars, etc. Okay? So don't hesitate to do that. And then if we can get this to move forward. Some pro tips. You want to, like I said, bring questions to the interview. Make notes in the margins of your resume. Always take extra resumes. Typically the committee has them, but taking them with you makes you look prepared. But keep the one that has notes for you. I always list my strengths and my weaknesses because I want to tailor them to the job I'm interviewing for. And then I'd list a couple situations. It's really good if you have stories that relate to several different things, like your leadership story could relate to your story about conflict. They're probably only going to ask you about one or the other, so you could use it for either situation. Take notes during the interview because they're going to give you inside scoops into what's happening with their company, whether they're restructuring or they're expanding their sales team, whatnot, because you can refer to those later in the interview and you can refer to those in the thank you notes to make it specific. And you're going to send your thank you note. Always, same day, send an email. You want to research the company. I know specifically Smithfield will ask what's happening in ag and how does that affect our company. We just had a bank here last week on campus that asked for the top 3 issues that you feel are negatively impacting agriculture. So research the company and research what's happening in the news in the field you're applying to. Most important is just practice. Practice in your car. Have your friend help you practice. Practice out loud. Time your answers because you don't want it to be too short, but you don't want it to be too long. Practicing out loud will help you hear how you ramble because we all start to ramble when we get nervous. So practice out loud. I will be able to tell that if you have not practiced out loud. And then make sure your specific responses tie back to the experiences. Okay. Be sure that you are, if you're saying that you are great with time management, you're backing that up with a very clear experience, okay? And we have a mock interview assignment. So next week, there'll be no slides. There'll be no work for you to review. We're just going to do mock interviews. So I strongly recommend you go ahead and set up an interview with me this week for the week of the 17th through the 21st, okay? We can do them on Zoom if you're far away, or you can come to my office. Either one is fine with me, but my weeks fill up super, super fast. And I really try to avoid doing these after hours for your benefit and mine. Okay, so prepare now, send me an email. If you email me on the 21st at 8 a.m., I can promise you I'm not going to have time later in the day to interview you. And that will be a 0 for you, and that will be on you, not me, because I'm making myself available now a week in advance of the assignment. You want to bring your resume to the mock interview, or if we have a Zoom interview, send it to me, okay? And you definitely want to edit it. If I gave you notes in the past assignment, make those changes. And then in the syllabus, there's a rubric. So if you want to know how to earn 10 out of 10 points, go look at that rubric. There might even be in the left-hand column some examples of some of the questions we're going to ask. So you could practice those specifically. But go check out the rubric so you know how you're going to earn a 10 out of 10. And let me know if you have questions. And as always, have a great week.